Today will be a day to remember for the rest of your life. The Pro Football Hall of Fame is excited to present the heart of a Hall of Famer program connected by Extreme Networks. With over 100 Hall of Famers participating, we have reached 47 states and countries all over the world, sharing the message that football is more than a game and can teach Americans important life values like commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty.
You have to make right decisions even when nobody's watching you.
Well, respect is not just given out. It's not handed out like a brochure. It's earned.
Today, you are presented with an opportunity to meet and learn from one of the greatest football players of all time. But more important than that, the chance to see that their Hall of Fame life wasn't given to them. They didn't roll out the bed great. They put the work in, on the field, in the weight room, in the classroom, in their communities. They made themselves a Hall of Famer on and off the field.
Your feet can't take you where your mind's never been.
Because you can make it, but it's just gonna take a little hard work and some effort and the drive and determination.
And today, you will learn you can do the same thing they did. You don't have to have a gold jacket or a bronze bust to make a difference in the lives of others. It's your decision whether you want to be a successful student, son, daughter, brother, or sister.
If attitudes are contagious, is your attitude worth catching?
It's integrity as well, because when you decide to pursue something and you don't quit, that says a lot about you.
Commitment to excellence. We can all aspire to be the best.
Welcome to a once-in-a-lifetime program, the heart of a Hall of Famer program connected by Extreme Networks.
It's an honor being named into the Hall of Fame, to having those 10 letters added to your name. But it takes more than just yourself. It takes a village of people. And with me, it was truly a village, because no one gets to the top by themselves. Someone had to push, prod, and pull me to the next level. Help me walk through the tough steps and be forever grateful. Each man and woman has an opportunity to impact a human being as they walk through life. And I'd like to tell you about the people who mentored me, offered me friendship and love unconditionally. I know there's a lot of people I didn't get a chance to thank, but I want to thank everyone for being here today, and I apologize for those I didn't get to mention. And I'm standing here today being honored because of each of you. So when the opportunity presents itself in your life, choose to be the difference maker in this village. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, I'd like to welcome everybody to our last Heart of a Hall of Famer series connected by Extreme Networks of this school year. And today we are fortunate and very grateful to be joined by Hall of Famer Will Shields right here at Central High School in Kansas City, home of the NFL draft, which starts on Thursday as we kick off another awesome NFL season and NFL calendar. My name is Jake Ray. I'm the Youth and Education Manager at the Pro Football Hall of Fame back in Canton, Ohio, where it's our mission to honor the greatest of the game, to preserve its history, to promote its values, and to celebrate excellence together. And those values we promote are those of commitment, integrity, courage, respect, and honesty, all of which made this guy sitting right here a Hall of Fame football player, but also made him a great person off the field, can make all of our students we have connected in today great students, and truly can make you the best version of yourself that you can be. So I'm excited to hear how these values have impacted Mr. Shields' career, both on and off the field. And you'll be surprised how many times these values come up in the program today. Before we get started, some thank yous I'd like to pass out to start with. I'd like to thank our great partners at Extreme Networks, providing us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame the opportunity, as well as all the students who have been a part of the program this year, the opportunity to hear from our Hall of Famers. Without their support, this program could not take place. They do so much for us at the Pro Football Hall of Fame and so much for schools across the country, including right here at Central High School. I want to thank them for their support throughout the year. I'd also like to thank our teachers, administrators, educators, anybody who allowed their students to be a part of the program today, and truly any program we did throughout the school year. I also want to especially thank the students and staff here at Central High School for allowing us to come into their school to have the program here today. And lastly, I have to thank our students. Without you guys today, this program doesn't take place. As Will knows, I have a bunch of questions ready to ask, but he doesn't want to hear me ask those. We want to hear from all the students today. This is the opportunity for you to ask a question directly to a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which, like you said in the video, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You might not get the chance to ever do it again. So I'm excited to hear those student questions today, and I know Will here is as well. If you're watching us on YouTube Live, if you're catching us on the live stream, feel free to drop a question in the live chat. We've got some folks back at the Hall of Fame monitoring that. If you have a question, let us know your school, where you're from, and then go ahead and ask that question. We'll try our best to make it a part of the program. If you're watching us as a view-only school here on Zoom, feel free to ask a question in the chat function as well. And like I said, we'll try our best to make it a part of the program. If you are watching us today, no matter where you're at, whether you're right here in front of us, or whether you're watching us online somewhere, any pictures, videos that you take and you send those out on social media, make sure you tag at Pro Football HOF and at Extreme Networks and use the hashtag HOF values, and your post just might be reshared today. So with that being said, we're going to jump right in. I'd like to welcome Hall of Famer Will Shields.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it. You know, I guess with the young students I have here in front of me, it's always unique to be here and be a part of it. I want to thank you guys for spending your time today, sitting here in this classroom, you know, being a part of this. But I really want to know, what do you want to know? What can I give you as any kind of information or nuggets that you would want to know? What's going on? You know, life, anything that you need to sort of try to cover. Is there anything that you want to know since you're right here in front of me? Nobody? Quiet? Nothing?
Go ahead, first question. Go ahead right here.
Yeah.
So for the folks out there, the question was, how did, you know, Will miss, you didn't start just your first game, right? Is that it?
Just the first game.
And you know, played in all those games. How did you protect yourself, protect your body to make it through all those?
You know, once I got in the league, I was trying to figure out, you know, the best way to be there and try to stay as long as I could. I actually ended up putting a team around me to help me sort of keep my body in the best shape it could be. So I had a chiropractor, I had basically the trainers that were there, but I've added those other pieces on the outside to sort of help me keep my body in the best shape I could be. I would only take like 2 or 3 weeks off. Then I'd start working out again, getting ready for the next season. So I sort of temperamented my body to always be in semi-decent shape. And that made a big difference. Some of it's luck. I mean, you just so happened to, you know, didn't get any major injuries. And the ones you did have, you were able to play through and fight your way through. There was weeks that you had broken muscles in your hand. You just practiced with it balled up, and then play, and then open it up on the weekends and that kind of thing. So, you know, some of it's luck, some of it's, you know, just, you know, being able to be as flexible as you can be, but also you work at it. You know, every week you work at it the best you can be and try to see if you could be available for that next week. So a little bit of all of it.
All right, and question, go ahead. So the question is, what was your mindset going through school, not only high school, but college, juggling, being a student first, obviously, and then juggling the sport that you played?
Well, I think when you're in high school, it's different than when you go to college, because when you're in high school, you're fighting the day to day. You're trying to figure out what's going to happen, where you're going to be, what's life going to hold for you. You really don't know. You know, I try to tell everybody, oh, well, think of where you could be 10 years from now. But the hard part is you try to figure out what's tomorrow look like. And so high school was a little different. And so I was trying to figure out what do I want to do next? I mean, I didn't know if I wanted to be the next football player, if I wanted to try my art at being a singer, a rapper, a dancer, or something different. I mean, there was all those different avenues that you were looking at. I was in vocal music, drama, as well as football and track and everything else. So I had to sort of try different things to figure out where I wanted to go and how I wanted to get there. And so in doing so, sort of fell into the niche of, you know, you're a pretty good football player. Why don't you try that as what you want to do? And then when we ended up winning state, which made a difference in our life because we ended up being seen. We ended up being people starting to look at us as being different than just guys that were going to school. They were just, at that point, they were like, oh, well, you got a great running back. You've got all these other positions. Because I guarantee you, coming out of high school, I was not touted as being the one that would be sitting here in a gold jacket. I had a running back and I had different guys on my team that were far more talented, could run and jump and do all the other stuff beyond compare. But the difference is I got an opportunity to make the best decision of my life of where I wanted to go to school and what support I needed to get through school. And that's a bigger piece. You got to find those little nuggets of information to help you get to that next level. And so I had a choice of going to OU or Arkansas or all these different schools. And I ended up going to a camp in Nebraska. And I went up there and they already had, the support system, tutors in place, computer lab, all of that was already, and that was their focus was, how do I get you educated as well as get you to be the best football player you can be? So that's when I ended up sort of figuring out of the support system. You got to find out who's going to help you get to that next thing and use that to your advantage. And so that's what sort of helped me sort of propel myself through.
Now, we talked about at the beginning those 5 values: commitment, integrity, courage, respect, honesty. Now, obviously, you've mentioned how much you weren't focused on the game of football and how a lot of people, that's their sole focus. The blinders are on. Their sport is pretty much their life, and that's how they're going to get through college to that next level. But there's so much that the game of football and truly all sports, but we're the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so we're going to talk about football.
Yeah.
There's so much that the game can teach you. So looking at those 5 values, is there one that stood out to you more, that impacted your life both on and off the football field?
Well, I think the simple fact of once you got to that point of where you're truly committed, it made a big difference. I was committed to where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get there. To me, that became my focus. And every time you sort of look at it, you look at it in 5-year slots. And basically the commitment that you set for yourself is where you wanted to go. So before I went to college, I said, where will I be in 5 years? I want to play in the pros. So then my commitment was set. I needed to get the education done to be eligible in school to be able to do it. And then I needed to find a way to get on the field and play. And then I needed to find a way to show where I wanted to do. And that created that commitment. Once I got an opportunity into the pros, which of course at that point, it was more commitment and anger management at the same time, because I was more or less, thinking I should have been just like everyone else, first round pick, should be, in that first class, that draft of everything else, of being the best of the best. As you go out, being a 3rd round pick, my commitment is to be the best you can be from that point forward, because now I get an opportunity to do something that most people don't understand. Play a game and they pay you to play a sport, which is one of the coolest things that you can ever say in your life, is that they're going to pay you to play a game. So then my commitment was, how do I become the best? And that I might not be number 1, but I want to be within the top 3. So that became my next commitment. Next, be in the top 3, top 4, whatever it is, whatever the top 5 was, I'm somewhere in that. And so then you sort of take your little chunks and pieces and sort of work your way through it. And that makes a little difference than trying to do it all at once, because that's the hardest part, because then it becomes overwhelming. And so you commit yourself to small bits and pieces and then churn your way away. It'll make a big difference.
Now, we'll touch on this again at the end, but since you mentioned it, you're talking about, your draft experience. And obviously, a lot of kids' dreams are going to come true this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when they hear their name called. And then a whole nother chunk of guys are going to get those phone calls afterwards, being undrafted free agents. What was the draft experience like for you? How is it different than what you see today? And what was it for you to go through that whole process to eventually hear your name called as somebody who got drafted?
Well, we can even go pre-draft of how that makes you feel differently than anything else. When you're not a 1st round draft pick, you're not going to get invited to fly out to teams and basically for them to, prod you and ask you questions and everything else. I think I had one of the best experiences as far as going through the draft, because it fueled where I wanted to end up being where I am today. And the reason I say that is because I got a chance to sit in the room with the guys that were drafted in the 1st round. So I was the roommate of the guy that was going to get drafted in the first round. So I got to answer the phone calls from the other coaches. When the other coaches called and they were asking for your roommate, and you're going, hey, yeah, well, what about me? I'm like, the position right next to that guy. And they were like, oh, no, just tell me such and such called, or tell them this coach called. And so it sort of set the precedent of where you're going, oh, okay, well, I'll get my chance to sort of prove where I want it to be. But then the draft came along, and luckily I had two agents that were really smart guys. And one of them actually is from here in Kansas City. He's now the president of the Chicago Bears. So he was pretty smart. And he was sitting there, and we were actually in our apartment because we weren't here at the draft. They didn't move the draft around. It was in New York at that point. So if you're not in the top 20, they're not bringing you to New York. You're sitting at home, you're wherever you're going to be, and you're getting phone calls from different coaches. So first round's gone, second round goes, I get a phone call, I get excited. Man, I'm gonna go in the second round. Which team is it gonna go? I had a good, we went to the combine. I know the Washington Redskins worked me out real good. The Rams worked me out, and the Chiefs didn't even work me out, but we had a meeting in a room like this where they talk and that kind of stuff. So I was thinking, yeah, maybe one of these teams. So the Washington Redskins called me on the phone, and the first thing they asked you, hey, anybody been calling you? And I wish I was a good liar at that point, because I should have said, oh yeah, coach, everybody's calling me. But at that point I was like, no, nobody's calling me yet. He was like, well, we're thinking about taking you here in the second round. And then they rolled around and the draft came at that point in the second round. They took this running back. I'm trying to think of his name. Being pretty good, but the simple fact they took him in the second round. Then my agent go, hey, third round, the Chiefs need a guard. They signed the guy because it was really the first year of free agency. Before that, everybody was stuck with their teams. And he was like, yeah, they signed the guard, but they were going to need one as a backup. And so they ended up drafting me. And at that year, they didn't have a first or second round draft pick because they had traded for Joe Montana and that whole group. So I ended up being their first pick overall, but in the third round. But it was one of those days where you sit back and you look at it and you go, okay, where should you fall in the draft? And most people got to realize that it's their need, not necessarily what you want. And so only thing you want is to be the first guard taken off the board, which you wasn't. So at that point, now you have something to prove. So that draft day made it even better for me, I think, because I was a third round pick and I wasn't the first guard taken off the board. So it made me hungry, made me want to have to prove myself more. So I think it was a great thing that how it happened. And each person would say it's different for them. But for me, it made me want to be better, do better, and work better to know where I needed to be to try to be the best you can be and try to get on the team. Because that was sort of the draft experience. So it was pretty cool. I loved it. It was awesome. But it was also humbling and frustrating. But that's part of the process.
I would say it worked out pretty well. I would think at the end of the day.
I can't
if you had, like, sitting in this room, you had 50 of the top prospects, or maybe that second tier of guys that are going to be day 2, day 3 guys, what would those pieces of advices be to those individuals that aren't going to be picked in the top 20 and might not hear their name called when they want it? What would that one piece of advice you want to stress to them about? You know what, it stinks, but there's beauty that can come out of that.
Well, the way I see it is, you just want an opportunity to be in the room. You just want a chance. You just want one guy, person, whoever it is, to fall in love with you enough to say, I want that person to come show me what they can do. Because then after that, it's on you to make what can happen. I mean, I always look at John Randall as being, the guy that wasn't drafted, that was a free agent, that's now a Hall of Famer. And I tell everybody, ask me who was the hardest guy to go against, it was that guy. And it was, he was hungry. He wanted to prove what he could do, and he did it very well. But it's when you get that opportunity, when is that door going to open for you? When is that crack is going to be there? And then ask the other question, are you ready for it? Have you prepared yourself to be ready for any door that opens? And that's what you have to do. That's what you got to do every day. Because you never know, that person that walks through this hall might be the next person that could help you get to where you want to go in your dreams.
I don't know if you were looking at my cheat sheet over here or not, but the next question was going to be who was your toughest opponent, but you just took it right there. So folks there at Beechcroft, we're going to have you come up with another awesome question.
That's
for
okay.
Will.
I could go from there because John Randall was a guy that gave me a hard time. And actually Trevor Price was a guy that was really good. Strahan, of course, and I got to go against Strahan my whole career, even my rookie year, or because we came in at the same time. So I got to see him a couple of games in before he became as good as he really was. Those guys gave me a hard time. Chester McLaughlin was a guy that was unbelievable. Basically, he could take over any game he chose to take over. That's how talented he was. We were actually teammates for a little while there, and it was one of those guys that basically would come in and say, "Hey, coach, I don't want to lift." And you're like, "Well," he's like, "Yeah, you're going to have to lift." And he was like, "Well, if I put X on his bench and I do it 10 times, do I have to lift?" And the coach goes, "Yeah, go ahead, put it on there. You do it 10 times, you can lift whenever you want to." Stack the weights on, gets under it, does it 10 times without even breathing hard, racks it, and walks out of the gym. That's how strong he was.
Along those same lines, we always like to find out, we talk about obviously the moments when you get enshrined, the end of your career, but we always like to know the beginning of your career. What was that welcome to the NFL moment? You go through the draft, you go through your mini camp, you're running out the tunnel for your first game. Was there a moment those first couple of weeks where you're like, all right, I've made it to the big leagues now. This is a little different than it was in college?
Well, day one, they sort of set us up for failure. I'm just telling you, as a rookie, when you walk in the door, back then they do what they call separator drills. It's one-on-ones with a running back right behind you. So it's me against another guy. Then they got a running back behind you, and it's, they call it Oklahoma drill or what have you. And they have lists that they put up, and I have Schottenheimer that's sitting here. He's going, "Okay, Shields versus Salamua, and Shields versus this." And I was like, "What is a Salamua?" So Dan Salamua was a big Samoan guy that was strong as all get out. And, we get to square off one-on-one. So this is how we started training camp. And for us, training camp was 6 weeks. Now they're about 2.5, which is a little different, 2-a-day practices. But that was my wake-up moment between that, and then we actually ended up practicing against the Minnesota Vikings, which had 3 of the 4 starting linemen are all in the Hall of Fame. And so that was really my wake-up week of understanding what it was like to be in the NFL, and that there was a big learning curve to be learned. But yeah, it was amazing to watch and be a part of, because it sort of set the tone of where you wanted to go and how you had to get there by seeing guys that have done it that well, that early in your career.
Awesome. Well, with that, we're going to dive into kind of the virtual side of things now. And normally we start off with some student questions, but I think a great way to start today is kind of set the scene on what the Hall of Fame is all about. We mentioned in the opening, what our mission is to honor the greatest of the game, like our Hall of Famers, but also anybody who's had an impact on the game of football from way back when it started in the 1800s all the way up to today's players. A cool fact, don't know if anybody knows, but first round of the draft happens. Those 32 draft cards, they actually go to Canton and will be on display after the NFL draft. So if you're on your way to Canton, you'll get to see those here in a couple weeks. But with that, we're going to send it out to Jerry Shockey, who's the director of youth and education at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, in a gallery that is very special to us, very special to you, and probably something that looks a little familiar as well. So Jerry, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All righty. Thank you, Jake. And Will, good to see you, my friend, and hope all is well there. All the students that are tuned in, thank you for tuning in here today. We're excited to get your questions here throughout the program. I am here in the most iconic gallery here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and that's the Hall of Fame gallery. And I want to give you guys just a little insight as to how big of an honor. So when you're talking to a Hall of Famer like Will Shields, I mean, the eliteness, if you will, of being a Hall of Famer. Think about this just for a second. Since football's been played at all different levels throughout history, there have been roughly about 300 million people to play the game. Okay, of that, at the college level, there have been about 5 million people that have played at the collegiate level. From that, there have been 29,000 people that have been paid to play, coach, or officiate the game in the NFL. There are only 371 members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and only 363 busts on display right now. And one of those is the gentleman that you're speaking with here today. You see Will Shields up here. And so Will, just a quick question for you. You know, you come back often. Actually, you were just here last week for a speaking engagement, and so when you get a chance to come through here, obviously in Tryman time, it's crazy busy. It's hard to get in here, those kind of things. But when you have a time to just walk through here when it's just you, and you get a time to just kind of think about, you know, the honor and just the greatness that's around you. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you walk through here?
You know, I think part of it is just all the guys that came before you, those that set the precedence of where you wanted to be and what you've done. And to me, that made a big difference of going through and saying that you're among, you know, 360 guys or 70 guys of everyone that's ever played the game, and the uniqueness of that within itself, which is really cool.
And as a follow-up to that, and we know you very well, our department, our staff, obviously, but our department, you do a lot with us just with the youth education department, from the skills camp and Heart of the Hall of Famer and all these things you're involved. And I know a lot of it comes from, you know, just offensive line mentality. You do all the work and get none of the credit. You know, you have that humility about you. But that's one thing that I always know about you, Will, is that you've always been a very humble guy. How do you stay grounded? You know, being that you're, you know, played in the NFL, all the Pro Bowls, the bronze bust. How do you stay humble in all that?
Well, I think it's pretty easy. I think I'm coming from a military background makes a big difference. My dad was in the military, so he was in the Army. He kept us really well and really grounded of what we are and what we needed to do and how to work to get to where you were trying to go. You know, that made it more easy and prevalent of understanding all the work and things that he had went through. And yet, you know, you never heard about it till later down the road of how he got things done and how he did things. So it's more of a family trait between him and my mother of what they instilled in us, and it's sort of prevalence as we grow through to what they gave us from that point forward.
Perfect. Thank you, Will. I appreciate it. And thank you again to all the students that are connected in here today. You guys have an awesome program that's going to be taking place here today. And so, Jake, I'll send it back to you, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for the look inside the Hall of Fame gallery there in Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So we're going to continue with some questions from all of our students who are remote here today. So we're going to start with those students at Beechcroft High School. Hopefully they got another question ready. So those folks there at Beechcroft, go ahead and unmute your microphone, have a student step up, state their name, the grade that they're in, and then go ahead with their question. All right, looks like we got somebody up there. Go ahead and unmute your microphone there.
Yep.
All right, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Introduce yourself.
Hey, my name Elijah. I have a question for you, Will.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you would make it to this point in your life?
Pretty deep question.
You know, I actually never planned to be a Hall of Famer, but I did plan to play in the NFL. And once I got to the NFL, to play as long as I could. I had great coaches that basically says, you know, there's some people that can make it into the NFL for small stints, but once you can say it was a true career, it made a difference. And I think that's where it sort of started as, hey, I want to make sure it's a career. And that sort of put me on this path. So it wasn't the path of becoming a Hall of Famer. It was the path of just proving that you could be the best you could be. And this just so happens to be the outcome of what came to fruition.
It's like we said, you know, I think things turned out pretty well, you know, and obviously it goes back to, you know, all the work that goes into it. You know, Basically we say in the video there, you just don't roll out of bed and become a Hall of Famer. There's so much work, and it goes, you know, you mentioned your family and so many things that had an influence. Looking back, was there a moment that stands out to you as that tipping point of where you not only realized you could be a star in the NFL, maybe a Hall of Famer, but it was a legit thought. It was a legit thought that goes through your mind of, you know, I think I can do this.
Well, I think as you got to the pros, it was different. It was more or less trying to find in where your feet were and where you were going. But I had a great sage of a O-line coach, Art Shell.
Fellow Hall of Famer.
Fellow Hall of Famer that basically goes, hey, man, if you keep doing what you're doing, you might be able to put 10 letters behind your name. And I was like, 10 letters, what is that? He was like, oh, 10 letters, you know, Hall of Famer. And I was like, you really think so? He's like, yeah, you keep doing what you're doing. And you might at one point be considered to be a Hall of Famer. So it took another Hall of Famer to ever say those words to me before I ever even thought about having that as far as a opportunity at any point. So that's when it sort of clicked for me of, well, as long as I keep doing what I'm doing, I could possibly get to that next round, but it was not a goal in mind. But art was the one that sort of set the seed in my brain of you could be that good and get to that next level.
I'm sure it helps that it came from a member of the Hall of Fame, which who knows what it takes to get there.
Yeah, especially. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna go to our next group connected in remotely here today. We're gonna go to the North Ridgeville Academic Center for our next question. So folks there in North Ridgeville back in Ohio, go ahead and step up to the microphone, state your name, and then go ahead and with your question.
I'm Nathan from 6th grade, and my question is, before you were in the NFL, what were some things that you learned from your old coaches, and how'd you get better from that?
So before I was in the NFL, I actually went to the University of Nebraska, and I had this old sage Tom Osborne that's still up there messing around doing different things. And he sort of set the tone for what we wanted to do, had great coaches that sort of pushed us forward and pushed us out to do other things. One of those was actually community service, going out and speaking and getting in front of people. And I always said, what story do I have to tell? And they go, well, just tell how you got here. Tell where you've been and what you're trying to do, because there's always somebody that's been in your shoes. That's always been that person that's tried to figure out to get to where you are. And so they've always pushed us to do new things and unique things. And that's what helped me grow from college to pros, is always absorbing what's around me, being able to pull in new information and use it to my best ability. So I'm one of those guys that I'll watch film on other players and other things and everything else, and I'll borrow pieces of everybody else's game and what have you to make myself better, because I think there's always something you can learn from somebody else. And so I think that's where Coach Osborne and that group sort of groomed me to grow and try to be different and to do different things and unique things. So my training, my off-season training and everything else was sort of unique within itself, of how I used to do racquetball and different sports than just football to get ready for the next season. And that started, at the University of Nebraska and then grew from there.
You talk about your time there in Nebraska. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the podcast that Will Compton does. Obviously a graduate of the University of Nebraska. Yeah. And I've been fortunate enough to take in a game in Arrowhead. Both school, your school and the team you played professionally for, great fan base support.
Yeah.
How important is it as a player? I always like to ask about the inside the locker room. We see all these things about how great fan bases are, but when you truly run out of that tunnel and the fans are going berserk, how motivating is that as a player?
It's awesome. I mean, and then once you start playing the game, you feel the ebb and flow of the fan base on certain times. When the defense is on the field, you can feel the difference, the change, and how those aspects sort of help you through the game. Sometimes you don't even see what happens. You hear it before it actually goes along. And to me, that plays a big role in how you play the game and what you feel about it. But pregame is always good. But once it gets rocking and rolling and you're putting, points on the board, it makes a big difference.
What would you say, besides, the speed, the gameplay, what's the biggest difference between being at a school like Nebraska playing high level college football versus the NFL?
It's all a step up. Because you think about it, you have the cream of the crop from high school that goes to college, and they're picking the best of the best, and they're saying, hey, we want to give you an opportunity to play. Then it goes from there to where we're going to take those guys that were really good in college and now expand that into the pros. So everybody you face has a history of some sort of greatness, of somewhere, somehow. They're not guys that they just, oh, this guy is okay, let's bring him in. No, they've got a history, they've got something that they've accomplished to be there, and that makes a big difference. And that's where now you got to understand the speed, the fast, and understand the strength. Strength is a big difference, and you got to understand the leverage and the motivation of how you get that done.
All right, well, we're going to go out to another question from a group we have connected in. We're going to go to Maple Heights for our next question. So our folks there at Maple Heights, go ahead and step up to the microphone, unmute yourself, state your name, and then go ahead with your question.
My name is Chris. What advice can you give young people about how to develop their character?
Young people about how to develop your character. Well, you got to realize every day is different and you got to learn different things, and your character is built on what your fabric is. How do you want to be represented? How do you want to be known? How do you want to know where you want to be down the road? You go back and figure out, ask the questions, what was I like in middle school? Because I don't really think about it. Or what was I like in high school? You ask those people and they go, well, you were okay, you were quiet, you were this, you were that. How do you build a rapport of you being the best you could be on a regular basis? And to me, that's how you build character. Doing the right things at the right time, making the right suggestions at the right time, which is always hard. Because sometimes it's not going to be what everybody else wants to have happen, but it's what you should be able to make happen. And don't get me wrong, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. All of us have done stupid things, including myself. And that's just part of the learning process. But when you have that opportunity to make those choices, make the best choices of what you know that you want to be known for down the road. And hopefully it's the more positive things than the negative.
Now, throughout your career, obviously you had a lot of success, ending up in the Hall of Fame. But in 2003, you win the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. And for those of you that don't know what that is, that's sometimes regarded as the highest honor in the NFL, even thinking about MVPs, Players of the Year, because it's an award for what you do off the field. So what did it mean to you to take home that award in 2003?
It was awesome. And what I call it part of the Kansas City Award. It's for everyone that was a part of it, because I couldn't do it by myself. I had teammates, I had other people that had committed time to be a part of it. And so it's not what I could do, it's the bridge. I call it the bridge of building people together to make something positive happen. And to me, that's what was really important about it, is being able to get people to do things out of the norm so they understand that there's other pieces that needs to be built in our city, in our community. And being able to maybe use a Joe Montana signed Christmas ornament to get them to show up to an event. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. You do what you do to try to make things happen. And to me, that was the most important piece. So yeah, it's an award that I do have at the house, but I consider it something that everyone here in Kansas City has helped me sort of get.
So Walter Payton Man of the Year, Hall of Fame, all the Pro Bowls, all the accolades. Besides all of that, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment throughout your life and why?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I've got 3 kids, so I sort of have to go with them. So they're good, they're upright, and they're not in trouble. So that's the greatest thing I think for me, is that they're doing what they needed to do, and I'm proud of them. And I think that's part of it, is being able to pass along your next legacy of what your children can do that you could.
Now, obviously that's a popular answer that we get. But how did you use the game of football to help you in your life off the field, in your family? What were some of the things you took away from the game that students who play sports or in music today, what can they take away to help them in their personal lives outside of that?
Well, they got to realize it teaches you all these different new complications of how life is going to be, the ups and downs, the ins and outs. How do you handle it? How can you work your way through it? It's more problem solving, and also dealing with other people with other attitudes, because sometimes that becomes a bigger issue than the game itself. Is how do I deal with this other person to get to my goal in mind? But those are different pieces that you sort of build in of, how do you figure out how to be able to be part of society and still make positive things happen? And I think that's one thing that's unique within yourself as far as playing the game, is that you have all these different people in the locker room that you're going to have to work together towards one goal, to win. And as you work towards that goal to win, how do you get each person motivated? And it's not necessarily your job. Do you do it by example? Do you do it by talking? Do you do it by this? Because all of us learn in different ways. Some of us are used to being yelled at. If you have a military dad, you're used to being yelled at a little bit here and there. And some of us need the soft cuddling and different things. So it becomes that more goal-oriented of how do you be a good leader and figure out what pushes the buttons to make everything happen.
You talk about the idea of team, and like we said at the beginning, football is such a unique sport, and we're going to talk a lot about it because we believe it's the most team focused sport out there. You step into your huddle. There's 11 people in your huddle on offense, 11 different last names, 11 different backgrounds, 11 different beliefs, 11 different jobs, but they all have one goal. So what does it mean to be a part of that huddle, and what do you learn from those other 10 people in that huddle with you?
Well, you first of all, you learn all your weaknesses and your strengths for each person. because we all have them, and we know what some do better and some do worse. And so then you learn how to negotiate around each other to work toward that common goal. Because, you know, there might be certain guys that give me a harder time than other guys. So I need help from my right tackle, or I need help from my center, or vice versa. And so those are the little nuances of the game, because you become together as a group to move forward as one.
Mhm.
And to me, that's what makes the team so unique. That's what makes the group so unique, because we can't do it by ourselves. You know, you can't go out there just with a quarterback and win the game. You can't go out there just with a wide receiver and win the game. You need all the pieces. And that's what makes the sport so unique, is because you do need all the other pieces to win. And that's where you sort of learn how to compromise between one another and work out and do all the other pieces to build that camaraderie, to know that you have the same goal in mind.
All right, we got some time for some more questions from students right here in front of us. So if you got a question, shoot your hand up. Don't be shy. Nobody? I got more questions I can keep asking. All right, go ahead. Self-motivation, how was that? How did that work in your life?
Sometimes I say I've lost my mind, because I had an internal clock on myself of where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. But really, in all actuality, I had a coach my rookie year. So when I was drafted, my offensive line coach would tell me the story about, hey, I didn't want you here. I wasn't sure about if you could play. You know, I wasn't sure. Everybody else said you could play. I was like, whatever. I don't think you could. But then I showed up and I started doing different things. My first mini camp was not that good. It was pretty bad. And so he sort of set the tone. After that, I played defense for a little bit in the pros, rushing guys and doing that kind of stuff. And then he came up one day and I started figuring it out, how to block, how to do certain things and everything else. And then he goes, okay, I think you can play. I think you'll be really good. He goes, so I just want you to know this one thing, sir. The day I found out you could play, I'm looking for 4 more like you to replace you. That sort of set the tone. The day they find out that you can do something special or unique, they're going to try to find somebody else just like you to replace you. So for me, it sort of set my own tone of, that means every day you got to find something new about me that you didn't know that I could do. So every day I start inventing new ways of doing different things. So you could never find somebody to replace me, because I'm always growing. And, you know, and so that's what makes it unique with what you're trying to do. You're trying to create a unicorn that no one's ever seen before. And everybody else is trying to find one just like you to replace it. And that's what makes it really hard in the NFL, because they're always looking for the next guy. So that's what my motivation was, is, hey, this is a way of making a living. I need to find out how I can stay here as long as I can and make the best of it. So I didn't want anybody taking my reps. I didn't want anybody stepping on the field that was in my position. You know, even if they thought about it, it was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Even though my leg was falling off, I'm going to tape it up and I'm going to go out and do it. And that's another reason you have so many starts in a row, is it's sometimes selfish. Because I didn't want anybody else to show that they could do what I could do, because that gives somebody an opportunity to take your job.
Jerry talked about a little bit when we went live to him, and he talked about, you know, what it means to walk into the Hall of Fame. And I always like to compare to the fact of what it is like walking into Canton, Ohio, going to the Hall of Fame as Will Shields, NFL legend, versus Will Shields, the Hall of Famer. Is there a different vibe? Do you feel something different when you walk back through the doors as a Hall of Famer compared to just an NFL legend?
Well, I think he sort of, for me, because I'm considered one of the younger Hall of Famers, even though I'm, 50, 52 soon to be. But when you walk into the room and you're sitting there with all the people you emulated and all the guys you wanted to be like, to me, that's the aha moment. When you're sitting next to Joe Namath, or you're sitting next to these guys that have already been there and done it at a high level, and you're now considered just as good as they are in that realm. So walking as a legend is different. You still sit there and go, man, that's Jim Brown. Man, that's such and such. And you're sitting there going, oh, that's pretty cool. But it's still humbling on the other side of saying you're considered one of them because you have a gold jacket like that.
Now, in that room, for those of you who don't know, there's a luncheon that takes place every enshrinement week in Canton, Ohio, where it's just Hall of Famers. No staff, no cameras, no nothing. It's just everybody that's a Hall of Famer in this luncheon. And I always like to talk about the level of respect because there's so much competition throughout your NFL career. But it's a healthy competition. You respect the guys across the line from you because they're putting in the same work that you are.
Yeah.
You get in this room with the likes of the Joe Namath and the Jim Brown, and there's just such a high level of respect that I don't think I can even comprehend. What is it like being in there, and what is that level of respect between all the Hall of Famers?
I actually have fun every year. I'd switch tables on purpose so I could sit next to another group because these guys have players that they've played with, teammates that they've played with that have all made the Hall of Fame. So I get to sit and listen to them banter about their years of playing. And so it's still part of that learning lesson of being able to pull information out of the guys that went before you and find out, what am I missing? What didn't I get a chance to do on my way to that path? Because you got to realize that some of these guys are great businessmen on top of being great NFL players. So I got to figure out all the little nuances that goes along with it. So to sit in that room is really an honor within itself, but it's really cool to be that fly on the wall for guys that had unbelievable teams that they have multiple guys in, and just to sit there and just absorb.
Now, you've obviously been through the ceremony both as an enshrinee and as a returner. We want to focus on your time being enshrined, going through the whole process, event to event to event, getting your jacket, getting the bus, giving your speech. You finish all that up. Your speech wraps up. You're going back. You're taking pictures with your jacket on with the bust you just unveiled. What's that sense of relief like? And is it a deep breath and, hey, we're done, we're through it? Or is there a lot of reflection that goes on after those moments?
It's a whirlwind because you go through so many things going into the Hall of Fame. So the first thing they do, they whisk you off to a little room. Everybody's sitting there high-fiving each other. You're excited. Then the next day they come in and they measure for your jackets. Then they start the bust piece of it where the guy, takes pictures and everything else. Then when he gets close and he thinks he's close, he'll fly you in and they'll walk you through all these different pieces. So, and then you get there for enshrinement day and they're whisking you from autograph session to picture session to interviews to this. Then you got to go give your speech. And you're trying to figure out, okay, who do I tell thank you to? Who do I figure out how to do this? Plus, you're supposed to have a party where everybody comes in and celebrates what you're doing and how you got in and everything else. Who do you invite for that? I mean, do you actually bring everybody or just a select few? All of that plays a role into it. But then you get to that point of, you get done and you sort of sit down and you go, I had a career. It wasn't a flash in the pan of where I was there and I'm gone and I'm fighting for the next thing. They say I had a career in the NFL, which is unique within itself. And it really takes you a year after you've been in, maybe even a year and a half, before you reflect back and go, I'm actually in the Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool. And then they bring out and give you your ring, and you're going, yeah, got a pretty good little perk there. Being able to pull this out every once in a while and, flash and dash and not have to give your resume as much as people are asking the question. And that's another piece you have to add, give out the resume of, well, who are you and what you do and this, that, and the other. But when you wear jewelry like this every once in a while, that question comes out of, hey, you must be somebody. What did you do back in there? And so that's why this only comes out on special days and special occasions. But it's that unique pieces of things that cumulates the beginning of when you started when you were 6 years old to when you're done. And it's one of those cool moments.
Now you have a special tie in. Obviously, you mentioned the K Jewelers Ring of Excellence, but the Hager Gold jacket you have on. In doing our research, we found out that your mom used to work at the Hager factory, Hager company.
Know that my mother actually, this jacket, when they measured it, I asked them who made it, and they were like, "Well, Hager Slacks made it, and it's this, that, and the other." And when I was growing up, my mom used to work at a factory in Lawton, Oklahoma, and they only had 2 factories in the U.S. For Hager's, and it was one of those places. And so I got a chance to let them know that, the same jackets, you made, my mom was pressing that stuff beforehand and now you get to make me a couple so I can show mom how good it is to wear something that she had started with a long time ago.
So a very, very special tie, and
Yeah.
on top of not only being a Hall of Famer, the
Yeah.
tie the family in there as well.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit here. We mentioned the NFL draft earlier, but looking at the draft that's coming up on Thursday, start to really, NFL fans have been itching to get some more football. It isn't a game, and you've got the USFL, you got the XFL on right now, but the NFL, is still king, and the season starts on Thursday.
Yeah.
What is it like to have it here? Being somebody who's, relatively grew up close to the area, you spent your entire career in Kansas City, live in the area now. What's it mean for the NFL eyes and the eyes of football to be on the city, starting with the draft on Thursday?
Well, you got to realize Kansas is doing big things. It's awesome because the simple fact that, you have the Super Bowl champions, as well as having the draft, as well as we got soccer coming after that. So we're pulling off a lot of good things back to back to back. But, just to have the draft here is really cool to get people out. And I like the way they move it around from place to place so that people get a chance to see what the country feels like, but also to see what other teams can do and what they can put together. And I think that's what's huge about having them here in Kansas City, to be able to show them what real barbecue tastes like, stuff like that. So, our little bragging rights of different things. And so I think that's what makes it cool, of being able to move it around. Plus it helps every city by bringing in the draft.
Yeah. I will say I went out to Joe's last night for dinner, so I did get my Kansas City barbecue while I was in town.
You ask here, does everybody, what is the best barbecue that everyone thinks here in this room?
See,
I just want to throw that out so he understands.
Okay, so I got to go somewhere else tonight. All right, noted. You mentioned Super Bowl champions. Seeing the Chiefs win a couple here over the last few years.
Yeah.
As somebody who played for the team, one, how does the team embrace those legends into moments like that? And stepping back from a fan perspective, what is it like to see your Chiefs, bring home the Lombardi Trophy?
It's really cool to watch them actually win. When they won the first one, I had one player that was still on the team from when I played. So it's like one guy was there. But it's really good watching, it's part of the city. The city is embracing it. It feels great. It makes, everybody's Monday is a little better when you win games compared to losing games if you're a Chiefs fan. But to be able to say you got 2 Super Bowls is really good. But think about it, they're playing the championship the last 5 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And if we played here at Arrowhead, which makes it even better. So we've been sort of spoiled, and that's a good problem. And, to say that it's the only organization I've ever played for, it always makes you feel more comforting to watch them do well. They've embraced us going back and forth, as they say, good times and bad times. But, I actually got a chance to stand on the field before they won the last Super Bowl and, bring out the Lombardi Trophy. So to me, that's a cool thing. Mm-hmm. That's something that, you don't get to do every day and be a part of. And I think that's what makes it unique, is those little moments that you get to go out, beat the drum, do those things, everything else that keeps you included to be a part of the organization, even after you're gone. And that's what makes it really cool.
Last question here, looking at the draft, you do have a little bit of involvement with the college football game, which we'll talk here in a second. So having that background, seeing some players come through, specifically looking at the offensive line, what are some names that stand out to you as, might be some difference makers that are coming out of the draft this year?
Well, there's a couple of different groups that you could look at. Of course, you always look at the big 4 or 5 schools. You look at, the big 5 that come out from those different groups. Mm-hmm. And there's always a couple of kids that stand out, and some kids are going to stay, or they're transferring schools before they come out, which you're waiting to see them. But, there's always the Alabama group, the Tennessee group, those guys that are always, prevalent at the top of the list because of the style of football that they put in.
Yeah.
So you more or less look at it for style of play than actually individual, because some teams are harder. You go to Oregon, it's a little harder. They do more passing and do more different things. So you got to find those diamonds in the rough that transition over.
Now, for those of you who don't know, you got the college football playoff every year. Will here is actually on the selection committee for the college football playoff and gets to sit in that room when those rankings come out. Now, we're not going to ask for the nitty-gritty details, but what is it like, one, to be named to that committee, and then 2, to be able to have a voice, have a vote when it comes time to name those top 4 teams?
It's an honor to be in the room, to be a part of the group. they're a unique group of guys and ladies, and we get a chance to sort of sit and work at different things. And to me, it's been an honor. This is my last year that I'll be on it, and but it's one of the coolest things I've ever done.
Awesome. And some other stuff that you're doing around today, not only doing that on everything you do around the community, but you have your Will to Succeed Foundation. Can you just explain a little bit about what that is and some of the things you do? We know you have a gym here locally as well.
What are some of the gone, man. We got rid of that
the
thing.
gym's gone?
Yeah, we're done with that thing, which is good.
Talk a little bit about the Will to Succeed Foundation and things you're doing in the
Will to
community.
Succeed, we started when we first got here, and it started off with working on the battered and abused women and children. And then we ended up expanding it. I call it the Umbrella Foundation. So we put an umbrella over anything and everything that needs to be taken care of. We work with about 60 different groups here, and this week we'll actually launch another 501c3 here in Kansas City, IC Stars, that'll actually find tech talent where tech talent isn't found. It is a work study program that's built out to sort of bypass colleges and get to that point to where we can get people to work right away instead of worried about how to pay for the next level and that kind of thing. To me, it's very important to be a part of the community and be able to do what you could do to help others bridge of where they need to go and where we all need to go. We all need to be a part of the community and understand that, everything has that ebb and flow between each person. And if we always say, if you can't give us time, give us your money, and we'll find somebody that has the time to make things happen that should happen in every community. And to me, that's an important piece of being part of your community.
All right, you guys got time for a couple more questions, so we'll open the opportunity one more time here for our students at Central. Anybody have a question here before we wrap up? Go ahead. So who growing up, was there an idol, a mentor that you kind of shaped your game after?
Yeah, actually, I followed the Cowboys and stuff quite a bit. So, Ep.234 Jones and, a couple of those guys on that side of the line. Because I played offense and defense and through high school. So I emulated most of my game off of defensive players and then ended up controlling and changing into an offensive player as I went to college. So we call it control violence. And so that's what I learned, is that control violence piece of being able to understand what defenses were trying to do to you to make you better as an offensive lineman. But, Ed's a good guy to follow and be a part of, and, emulate your games off of them and those guys.
All right, I had another question in the back. Go ahead. The biggest thing that helps you get to that seat right there.
Knowing what I don't know. Other words, saying, I don't know it all. I don't know it all. I need to learn more. I need to know what you know. I need to be able to be an open book to understand everything outside of the world that's different. And I think one thing that really sort of opened my eyes to even something newer beyond that is the first time I actually traveled to Europe and seeing what European life is different than American life. And that everybody doesn't see everything the same way that we do. And we need to find out why and what makes the difference. And it's okay to understand and ask the question why. And I think that to me is the most important piece, to say that still today, there's a lot to be learned. And there's a lot to knowledge that needs to be passed along that we need to absorb. And I understand everybody wants to stick to their guns of this is what I believe and this is this and this is that. But at least learn 3 different avenues or 3 different points that go along with what you're saying from 3 different views. Our view, their view, and somebody else's view, and then make your decision after that. And to me, that's very important.
Awesome. Well, students, everybody who's here at Central High School, everybody we have connected in today, I want to thank you for being a part of the program. Will, thank you for giving time out of your day, your busy schedule this week, to be a part of the program. And my last question here today is kind of trying to sum up everything we talked about today. We want these students to be able to take away something from the program today. So if you could sum up everything, leave them with one piece of advice, one piece of information to walk out of this room with today, to go back to their classrooms today for all of our groups connected in. What is that one piece of advice?
Well, in high school, we used to take this Sioux word that we call Hantayo, and that's the Sioux word for clear the way. So think about this. If everything that you do, you look at the Hantayo of things of how to clear the way, clear the way of your mind of being open to other things, clear the way of other people helping them get better. To me, that's the pillar of everything that we did and what we do. And so the Hanta Yo of life is making sure that you understand that you're clearing the way for others to be better, do better, and understand where you want to go. And to me, those are all the different pieces. So to me, everything comes back to that of how do you clear the way for not only yourself, but for others to understand what life can hold for you and that it's open. It just depends on what you find out that you love and be able to do from that point. I love football. And I'll just tell you that from the beginning, when it came to the J months, I started eating, sleeping, and dreaming football. And that's how I knew I loved the game that much. Find out what you love, pursue it, and make it happen.
All right. With that, we're going to wrap up this installment, the last Heart of a Hall of Famer program connected by Extreme Networks for the school year. Again, Mr. Shields, thank you so much. Appreciate you being a part of the program, coming out to the school day. For everybody we have tuned in, thank you for tuning in this year, not only to this program, but to every program that we have. We'll be back next fall for more programs all over the country. So from myself, from Nathan, Jerry, all of our team at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, thank you so much for tuning in. From everybody here at Central High School, thank you so much. That's going to be it for today. Let's give it one big round of applause here for Mr. Shields again.